everybody. Thank you for tuning in for another edition of Feelin A Draft here on the Grueling Truth Sports Network, where legends speak. I am, of course, your host, Dan Kornhauser, and joining me tonight, representing WDJY 99.1 FM, Atlanta Falcons Radio, and NFL draft analyst for StadiumRant.com, I'd like to welcome a Mr. Clint Goss. Clint, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining.
Thanks for having me, Dan. It's always good to have an opportunity to come on, but especially here about 2-3 days out, it's getting a little grueling. It's getting a little painful at this point. Need some new content. Need something fresh. Just kind of give me to Thursday at this point.
Yeah, we've hit the stretch run. It's time. I'm done hearing about this quarterback's odds to go number 2, and this guy may not want to play at this team. I'm over it. I'm done with it. But we are going to cover some of those rumors here tonight because there's some juicy ones going around, and they're definitely worth discussing. So let's jump into it right away. I mean, I think it's pretty fitting, since you're here, that we start with the Atlanta Falcons. They're sitting pretty, all right? They're sitting pretty at number 8 overall. Of all the teams in front of them, they should have their pick of the litter when it comes to defensive players, offensive linemen for the most part, aside from maybe Joe Alt if he goes 7 to Tennessee. So Atlanta's in a good spot. They've got their quarterback. They've got their number 1 receiver. They've got weapons on offense. So what do you think is most likely to happen for the Falcons on day 1 of the draft?
I've been saying for weeks on my show with Jordan Watkins over at 99.1, we've both been pretty uniform in saying that we think it's edge, and even more specifically, we think it's Latu. I've been saying that the last few weeks. If you've seen 100 mock drafts this draft season, at least 85 of them have had Dallas Turner to Atlanta at 8. And I've gone against that thought this whole time. I think Latu is going to be more of what they want right now and fits the window right now as somebody with more of a full bag of pass rush moves versus somebody like Turner, who's got more like 2 moves, developing still. Somebody think more of reaching closer to his peak in a year or 2. I think Latu fits the Falcons window. So he's who I have had circled in Sharpie for quite some time. I know that the last few days, the buzz has really gotten hot with Latu, as far as Vegas betting odds and things along those lines, and rumors as well. And for me, that hasn't changed my thoughts any. It has just reaffirmed confidence that, I think if they stay at 8, it's Latu. I think if they trade back, it's with the intent of getting Latu and some picks. Okay. I think ultimately the focus is on him. If they trade back and they miss out, there's other options. But no, that'd be my very confident answer. I think Latu out of UCLA is going to be a Falcon Thursday night.
Listen, I'm a huge fan of Latu at this point. I have had him solidly in
He's who I want.
I've had him solidly in my top like 10 to 12 pretty much since the get-go. And him and Turner, for me, are right there hand in hand. And another name that I've been hearing and seeing a lot lately, actually, is Jared Verse as well. That's another name I've seen pop up very popularly in some mainstream draft analysts, mentioning Jared Verse as maybe him being the target at 8 or in a trade down.
I think of Verse in that situation more like what I just said of you try and trade back, get some picks, and you look up and say a Chicago snags Latu, say somebody trades up, takes worst case scenario, say he was your guy. Oh yeah, I think they're fully prepared to take a Dallas Turner. I think they're fully prepared to take a Verse. And if let's say I'm wrong. Let's say I'm wrong and Turner or Verse is the number 1 guy on their board. I'd say the same thing about Latu being the 3rd on their board. They're prepared to take him if they trade back and strike out. You know what I'm saying? It's that edge 1 tier. There's so much flexibility, but I really think it is Latu and it's edge. If Goodell comes out there and says Terrion Arnold or Quinyon Mitchell, is my jaw going to hit the floor? No. But beyond that, it probably would. I mean, it's those 5 guys, those 2 positions to me. trade back or no trade back, I know that, it wasn't just, it was Daniel Jeremiah and one other, but I say the Daniel Jeremiahs of the world, the elite draft analysts and scouts. He was plugging the rumor of some Byron Murphy vibes.
I heard that. I heard that. Yep.
I'm not personally buying it.
Me neither.
But who am I to tell Daniel Jeremiah, like, yeah, right, So it's definitely worth watching. I don't personally see that with this shift for more of a base 4-3, kind of hybrid with Ryan Nielsen last year to now going to more of a 3-4 with Jimmy Lake and this kind of raw system coming from, McVay's LA. I don't think a Byron Murphy or Johnny Newton, for example, is the body habitus they're looking for in the interior versus what's already on roster. But that'd be closer to like my jaw hitting the floor. You mentioned the offensive line comment a second ago. That'd be a lot closer to my jaw hitting the floor.
Okay. So you're not at all concerned that I think Albert Breer recently reported that there's a handful of players that he reported that some teams are red flagging, and none of the names are anyone that we didn't expect. But the name that was at the top of that list was Latu with his neck injury. He did miss a couple of years due to the injury. He's come back, played a couple of years, and put up elite production. And like we've already covered, we're on the same page with this guy, top 10 guy, arguably the best defensive player in this class, most pro ready. And we'll actually get back to the age thing in a minute, because that's actually a thing not many people are really talking about. And I do want to touch on that a little bit this episode with you. But you're not at all concerned then with the neck in any way, shape, or form as a red flag for his second contract potentially or something like that.
I think there's a difference in red flag and, kind of having a little note on your patient file. Is it worth mentioning with Latu? Yeah, duh. But I think in terms of a red flag, I think this has been plugged a lot harder in the media than it has been in league circles. In terms of, I don't think that when I say casual, I don't say that with a negative connotation. I don't think the average casual fan or media member who follows a team or follows the league in general or follows the draft understands kind of the weight that goes versus, and what I say by this example, like with Latu's played two complete healthy seasons since he's had issues like that. I think more stock's going to be put into the film he's had of 2 years being healthy, and use the Falcons as a specific example. You don't go give the bag to Kirk Cousins at 36 years old coming off an Achilles and then say all of a sudden you're scared about an injury potential from 2 years ago. And, it's kind of one of those moments of like, nah, buddy, you talked a big game to that guy at the bar. Now he stepped out of his chair and wants to fight. So you got to do something. It's kind of like that's kind of how I feel about it. I think, no, you're all in. I just think he's the guy that's ready now. I mean, let's just say, like, if you and I weren't, take the neck out of it, just pretend it didn't exist right now. If we were sitting here, dude, we'd be sitting here going, this is the baddest cat we've seen coming out in the last few years. He can hang with anybody defensively we've seen in the last few years. Oh, man, if we've seen a rookie who has 10-plus sack potential out the gate, this guy can hang with. I mean, we wouldn't be saying any of that other stuff. You said you consider Latu, and you've had him as a 10 to 12 player for you this entire time.
The whole process.
The whole time. I think on my final board, he came out to 14 for perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hell, man, if you took that away, it's like everybody would be saying he was a top 7 player. Everybody. Like, it wouldn't be like we'd be talking about who's the top defensive player in the draft. It'd be like, oh, yeah, well, it's Latu. I just think you swing for it. Am I going to be stunned, like I said, if they come out and it's Turner? No. Am I going to be stunned if they come out and say it's Verse? No. But I think for this 2-3 year Kirk Cousins window you've opened for yourself, and after you've swung and a missed on a Hassan Reddick, and you've swung and a missed on a Daniil Hunter, and you've swung and a missed on a Montez Sweat, it's like, you got to take a swing at this pass rusher, and more importantly, you got to take a swing that lands. And he's there. Do it.
Well, let's keep with this whole rumors thing. Let's just dive in. We're going to go across the league now. One thing I do want to touch on before we move on, Daniel Jeremiah fairly recently says don't put Dallas Turner in ink at the Falcons yet at number 8. So we're not the only ones here wondering if it's going to be someone besides Turner. The NFL draft is crazy, and a trade down, like you said, is not out of the question. And literally everything's pretty much in play here except trading for a quarterback. So
I think all the stock, it's Dallas Turner is an elite athlete. Dallas Turner is a very productive player. He's played at Alabama. There are, like I said, so many great things about him, but just speaking on why I think it's Latu over him, or why I think it should be Latu over him, or why it could be, I think so many people are putting so much stock. Take away the fact he played at Bama and he's from the South and he's from Georgia. People are putting so much stock statistically, quantitatively on the tape in terms of Turner dropping back in zone defense and relating that to Ra's defense with Jimmy Lake and how often he, compared to league average, dropped pass rushers back in zone. I get that argument, but I don't think that's what I don't think they're gunning for this pass rusher at pick 8 or in the top 15 saying, yeah, well, this guy's really the best at dropping back and he can really pick up a tight end or a back better than anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're looking at each other and saying, this guy is the best guy who can put that quarterback on his backside over and over and over and over. And we don't have to teach him a lot,
And that's where the money is made. Let's put it bluntly, on the defensive side of the ball, that's where you're getting paid. You're not getting paid because you're a good tackler. You're not getting paid because you take the best angles on defense. It's or even because you're good at getting penetration. You get paid when you put up the numbers, when you get after the quarterback. That's what it's all about. And on the flip side, if pass rush is the most important piece on the defense, quarterback obviously the most important piece on the offense. And JJ McCarthy's odds have gone from 20-1 to 11-1 on FanDuel as recently as today, going number 2 overall to the Washington Commanders. And I've been seeing online there's a lot of people saying that this was reminiscent to them of what was going on with Levis and his line going into last year's draft, because it was pretty much the exact same thing. He went from like 100-1 to like 10-1 odds the week of the draft, and everybody thought he was going number 4 overall to the Colts, or top 5, or lock it in. Maybe Texans take him. Definitely the Colts are his floor. And then he ended up dropping to the second round to the Giants after they traded up for him. So at the end of the day, that was a whole lot of nothing. When it comes to this McCarthy buzz, let me see here. Hold on, where is it? Yeah, so 10-1. No, I'm sorry, 11-1. First question, 1, are you buying or selling JJ McCarthy being legitimately in the conversation for number 2 overall at this point?
Anything's possible with Dan Quinn. And I don't say that condescendingly. Anything's possible with Quinn. Could it be McCarthy? Yes. I'm not buying that. I've said from the start, and I've stuck to it, and I'm going to stick to it until I'm wrong. I think it's Daniels. I think Daniels is going to be what they want schematically with Kingsbury and what he has traditionally in a dual threat quarterback. I think the upside of him in terms of his rushing ability there, I think the thing with me is I'm confident that it's Daniels. And if it's not Daniels, I think it's May. It's like, for me to sit here and say that I think it's not Daniels and it's not May, and it lands on who I think is the third one, would be a little that'd be like me trying to make a hot take because I want to be cute. No, I mean, he's in the conversation, but I think it's Daniels. And I would be, I said jaw dropper. My jaw's not going to hit the floor if it's McCarthy, But oh yeah, I'm gonna be kind of jumping out of my seat, like, "Hello, we're here." Like where it's lot, it's started.
The draft
So,
has begun.
but no, I think this is just some Vegas games, and I think this is um, seeing who'll get excited to put some money on it. But
You know what?
no,
Let me put it to you like this. Let's do this. Let's have a little bit of fun with it, all right? What do you think is more likely to happen? JJ McCarthy goes second overall, or nothing happens with him? All these rumors that we heard about, everybody trying to trade up for him were lies, and he falls to number 11, and the Vikings just sit pretty and take him at 11. What do you think is more likely, him going 2 or him just dropping to them at 11 without a trade up?
going to 2. I really think I just don't see I don't see Minnesota one being comfortable enough to wait. Because it's like, look, let's get real. We talk so much about teams. It's coach speak and oh yeah, we could trade up, we could trade back, we could stay here, we could take this player, best
We're
player
open for
available.
business.
All the buzzwords. But
Yeah.
it's like let's get real. You don't exactly have to cover the Vikings or be an expert to look and see what their intentions are. You don't make that move to get the Texans pick at 23rd because you've got someone pegged at 23 you want to take, such as a defensive interior or something. Like, no, you did that to stock up ammo before war. And they're coming in guns ablazed. I mean, if you were to even just think of teams that could trade up around them, say like Vegas, it's like none of those teams have the ammo that Minnesota does.
They don't.
And aren't as nice of a landing spot in terms of what's built around you. Like if my kid was in this draft, man, I'd be looking at that Minnesota spot like it's pretty sweet, and look, Quessy and them are coming for it. So I don't think they can sit there and, can you trust the New York Giants at 6 to not say that they're over the Daniel Jones experiment? Can you trust Antonio Pierce not to trade up at Vegas and say that they need some more talent in that room? Because I think stylistically he really would favor and like McCarthy. Be it Jaden Daniels isn't available for him. Do you trust that Sean Payton doesn't decide to just? I mean, he's crazy. He's crazy. He just is. It's like, you gonna trust him? I wouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think Minnesota can trust him. I don't think they should trust him. And why? So you can sit there at 11, get screwed, holding the bag with a Penix or a Nix, and then at 23 you get a pick that everyone's going to feel the bad taste in their mouth. It's just like, not to sound like a Disney movie, but it's the truth. Like if Quessy was my buddy or something and we were having a beer, I'd look at him and be like, you have no choice but to land this plane Thursday night. Like you have no choice. Like, I say this like, they might not already have something lined up, conversationally. It's like,
right.
I'd be like, cuz you better land this plane or you're
So where do you consider this draft in terms of predictability? Because for me, if I'm just drowning out all the extra sound that's popping up in the last month, all the tomfoolery we're hearing of guys rising and falling up this and that, if I'm blocking it all out, for me, it looks like 3 quarterbacks. It's Caleb, Daniels, Drake. Then it's 3 wide receivers to the 3 teams sitting there. And then the draft gets fun at number 7, where the Titans are, and it's probably going to be Alt unless they like one of these pass rushers. And then we're sitting at 8, where the Falcons are. And if the board is sitting that way, I mean, why not a trade up for McCarthy there? Maybe the Vikings wouldn't have to give up that, 25th overall pick, 23rd overall pick. And on the flip side, could there be a surprise team that pulls a Kansas City Chiefs where they jump up from the mid-20s and get into the top 10 for the quarterback that they're targeting? Like, is that something that might be in the works? And that's always something to consider.
Well, it doesn't just have to be a quarterback. Hell, you could use my Falcons as an example. The Julio trade. We went from 27 to 6. Because we were, what we considered one player away. But going back to your talking point, it really is going to come down to Harbaugh. It's going to come down to does because I say all this. What would be the politically correct answer to say? It comes down to Monty Ford. I don't think Arizona's moving. I think they're in love with Marv. I think it's a perfect match for the value, the need, pairing him with the franchise quarterback, all around. And that team needs it's too perfect. That's just, don't get cute. You have picks. They're at a spot, even if you were the most trade back person, there comes a point where it's time to cash in. You've got picks. You got 4, you got 27, you got 35. It's time to cash. So I think it really, and now I say that assuming I think New England stays at 3. Could they move out? To your original question was the predictability.
Yep.
I think it feels easy for people to say it's predictable, but it won't be. We know it won't be. You know it won't be. You know it won't.
You know it won't.
You know it won't, and I know it won't. If you've done, if you've even followed, if you even just like the draft enough that you sit on your couch with your dog and eat snacks and watch it with your buddies, just hanging around for 1 or 2 or 3 of them, it's like a March Madness bracket.
See, but hold on. That's the thing. We say that every single year, but it's not because of trades. Like, I feel like last year this was like that. It was, oh man, all these trades are going to happen. And we had a total of what? 4 in the first round last year, something like that. And that seems to be the thing every year. There tends to be like, 4 to 5 trades in the first round every year. And everyone's always expecting, oh man, this could be the year we're going to get, 5, 6, 7 trades in the first round, and it never happens. And the top 10s are always boring. Sure, you might get a Clellan, what's his face, Farrell, yeah, for the Raiders when they took him 4th overall. You always might get one of those randoms in there, but like
Daniel Jones,
or Dan Jones even at 6 overall, like you might get something like that. But I feel like even those are kind of like rare. Like the Murphy thing of Murphy going maybe 8th overall or 9th overall to Atlanta or Chicago. Like, yeah, I like Byron Murphy as a prospect. Is he a top 10 prospect for me? At this point, I would say no. I don't see top 10. I just for whatever it is, he's a starter, good player. I just don't see it. But we're not talking about like a Murphy coming up. This would have to be something like Amarius Mims going 8th overall to being the first offensive tackle off the board, like something like that would
something like Harbaugh being in love with J.C. Latham and just saying, "Screw it, I want him," and take him.
I want him. I got my left tackle.
I want him, and I don't care.
Right tackle.
That's going to be so interesting. Can he say no to receiver 2? Can he? If he really is selling this, Kool-Aid of offensive line, run the ball. It's like, then does he? Because in terms of him stylistically and who he recruits and has drafted in the past, say in San Francisco, and Alt's not his ice cream flavor. It's J.C. Latham. It's like that one is, I've said that's been one of my, a couple weeks ago, I think I did something. It was like my 8 hot takes for the draft. And I do remember a couple of them off the top of my head, but I know one of them was J.C. Latham will be the second offensive tackle off the board. I feel very good about that. My jaw's not even going to hit the floor if he's the first.
Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because that's the direct, this synchronicity here that we have.
Mind free.
I love how you jumped into that with Latham because that's where I want to go. And you know what? It's been sitting here for a while, so I want to show him some love. He always tunes in. Robert Carter, Steelers fan. It's going to go down with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're building a strong team. Listen, Mike Tomlin, you're always going to have a strong team. And, we might talk a little bit about the Steelers here because I want to talk about the offensive line next. And it's interesting you mentioned that you had JC as maybe the second tackle off the board because Peter Schrager recently came out and said just that. literally that over this weekend. He said that Loudon could be the second offensive tackle off the board. Several teams in the league really like him. And I mean, the Raiders are one of the teams that are looking at offensive line or corner in the first round. They could be a team that goes that route. The Jets are looking offensive line potentially at 10th overall. Maybe the Bears sitting at number 9 want to give Caleb Williams something Justin Fields never had, and that's not only weapons on the outside with Keenan Allen and more, but a solid offensive line in front of him with 2 young, burly, athletic offensive tackles protecting him. So there's a lot of potential there for offensive linemen to go. Is Alt going to be the first offensive lineman off the board?
I think Alt is. Like I said, the only scenario I think Alt isn't is if Harbaugh just says, I don't care. And I wouldn't bet on it. It could happen, but I wouldn't bet on it. But going back to that, you mentioned the Steelers, you mentioned the Raiders, you mentioned some other names as far as people, with Latham and competing. And I think Latham has some things working for him that the average draft follower, NFL team follower can and would see, such as the guy is massive. It's like he's 6'6", 340 plus. He's a mauler. He's the 5-star recruit. He's been with Nick Saban, et cetera, et cetera. It's like the profile's all great. But I think also the things that you maybe dig in deeper, it's like, yeah, would you take J.C. Latham to be a right tackle? Yeah. But you could swing him to left if needed. And I think that's something you're not going to get from, say, a Talise Fuaga. That's something you don't know if you're going to how much you're flipping a Troy Fatanu over to the right, for example. You don't know, Mims's experiences at right tackle, but, he says he's practiced at left tackle in Athens. What do you got there? Tyler Guyton, for example, he's strictly been at right tackle. Yep. Hell, Mims has started a season at left guard in Tuscaloosa, just in terms of the versatility. And I think some teams that maybe aren't so locked in I've already got a right tackle, I got to get a left tackle. I've already got a left tackle, I got to get a right tackle. I think, versus a prospect, like I said, you're taking Talise Fuaga to be your left tackle, you're going to be in trouble. You're taking him to be your right tackle. I think, or versus, say, like a Mims. I think he's got a little more versatility. I think in terms of the consistent play and availability and some of the kind of streak to him, I think when you kind of put all that together, I've said it for a few weeks and I'm sticking to it. I think Latham is at worst the second off the board, and particularly when you look at the teams that'll be interested. Okay, who did I say? Okay, Chargers. Okay, keep going. It's like, while I think the Jets are interested in a pass catcher, the Jets are still sniffing around right there. The Raiders are sniffing around. The Saints have got to have a tackle worse than I've got to have oxygen.
Colts, potentially. Bengals always need O-line. Rams.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like that's.
So how many offensive linemen are we going to have in the first round?
Well, was what I was about to say was it's going to be one of those positions like where does the run start? Where does the run start? Where, this year you could use, for example, like the running back class. Who's going to be the one to break the dam and make the water start coming? Because it's like, finally took a running back. Now we all got to start doing it.
Well, you know what? And that's another thing. Since we're balls deep in the rumor mill, one of the hot rumors I heard today even was the Philadelphia Eagles are looking hot to move up. And if you're listening to the coaching staff, you're listening to the GM, it sounds like they want a right tackle. They want someone to take over for Lane Johnson when Lane Johnson retires. I mean, Johnson's 33 going on 34.
They like Guyton. They like Tyler Guyton.
That's the name that I've been hearing is Guyton.
Right tackle. Mm-hmm. Lane Johnson's his mentor. Obviously the Oklahoma connection. And the developmental tackle connection. Guyton has got all the physical traits. He, in terms of prototype size, length, lower body flexibility, going to want to work more on his upper body technical work and really using hands and using strength. But in terms of things that somebody like a Lane Johnson could work with, somebody like the phenomenal coach in Philadelphia, it's like, oh, I don't know Tyler Guyton personally, obviously, but I can guarantee you his camp's got Philly circled as their number one spot.
I mean, why wouldn't they? I
I
mean, it
mean,
makes
well,
perfect
why
sense.
wouldn't they? I mean, I'll say this: if the rumor mill is there's truth to it that they're looking to move up, it is for a Guyton, or it's because they've fallen for, say, like a Quinyon Mitchell as a press corner, and with some size as a boundary. That'd be the only two options. If you and I were to cut the feed on right now, and Daniel Jeremiah was like, they're trading up. I can't tell you what position, but they're trading up.
Mm-hmm.
We know it's one of those two.
I
But
think
no,
so. Yeah.
I think as far I would definitely say Guyton, and but that's such a perfect example right there. And not to go on another tangent from this conversation, but you talked about the predictability, and you talked about what we think at this point versus what will actually happen. Hell, sitting at this point, somebody tells you, "Oh, Tyler Guyton at 22," we're all saying he's available. What do you mean? Because if you looked at a consensus draft community, media community, NFL expert, whatever you want to call it, it's like Guyton's hanging around that what feels like 25 to like 35 range.
Actually, let me see. Give me 1 second because I have a consensus board that I track. I think
Oh,
it's
he's going
10.
for the fact check. He's going for the
Yeah,
fact check.
dude, hold on. I got the consensus board. I track like 10,
I'm getting
12 different analysts.
I'm getting lawyered. Let's
So
hear it.
I just want to pull it up for you where all these different guys have them. So we're talking about Guyton. Okay. So you were saying Guyton in what range did you feel?
I perceive him as being seen as about 25, around that like Dallas 24 range to like right outside of round one, first few picks around two, like the floor, maybe like a New
Okay.
England.
Well, you know what? You're not that far off because outside of a couple of outliers, one of which has him almost at 50 overall, and the other one has him outside their top 30. All
The
these other
51, that person has a vendetta or was stoned, because that's not happening.
well, you know what? You say that, but that individual also happens to have one of the more accurate.
I was literally waiting for you to respond and be like,
Boards.
that individual is Daniel Jeremiah.
No, no. Although Jeremiah is one of the ones that I do track, but
Yeah.
all the other ones outside of these two outliers, they all have him between 19 and 29.
Dude, him and
That range.
with the Rams at 19, buddy. You talk
Yo.
about some speed on the as pulling with that run scheme, the athleticism they thrive on. I mean, hell, Mims is a name I've had there as well. That is one of the more fascinating spots in the first round that people aren't hyping up enough. Beyond this is Sean McVay's first round pick.
Yeah.
Clicky. It's like dig into it more. I'm like, man, there's like just talking as if they stay at 19. Don't even say trading up. Don't even say trading
Mhm.
back.
Yo,
Hell,
they're
they need corners like crazy. Terry
yo.
Arnold sitting there, Quinyon Mitchell sitting there. They're high enough on a Nate Wiggins, for example. Jump over. You're never going to replace Aaron Donald. But what did we talk about earlier? We talked about a Byron Murphy. We talked about some interior defensive line pass rush. A Johnny Newton. You think those guys wouldn't be absolute killers in that system where they got that much out of a Kobe Turner last year, a Byron Young last year, as third, fourth round kind of picks?
Mhm.
You don't think that they're sitting there and a Dallas Turner's falling to him, a Jared Verse as a pass rusher and that defense? You kidding me?
Yeah, let me put
Sheesh.
it like this, man. So
They
I
they say we got to have a tackle. We can't say no to Guyton. We can't say no to Mims. Hello. It's like if I'm sitting here and I covered the Rams or I pull for the Rams, I'm saying there's 7, 8, 9 guys that I'm thrilled with at 19 and are a major get for us. They're sitting pretty, and look, they got two of the brightest in the league picking up the phone. It's like they assuming they stay at 19, they're about to cash in there.
and it's funny you bring up the Rams because they are one of those teams that for me have been a total wild card throughout this whole process since the season ended. Their team, it's weird because the Rams, you think of the Rams and you think Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Puka, you think Sean McVay, Aaron Donald, even though he just retired. But like you think of the Rams and you think of all these great things, and then when you look at the Rams roster, you realize there's a lot more holes than one would think initially. And I've done 4 mocks. I'm going to be doing a 5th posted this Wednesday, and every single mock I've had not only just a different position, I've had a different player. Period. In every mock. Like there's some mocks, like for example, Seattle, I've kind of pigeonholed him into taking an interior offensive lineman one way or the other. Like
Graham Barton's my favorite. I plug that one every time. Yeah,
it's just too easy. It's one of those. Like if they're sitting there and a guy like Barton or Fautanu are sitting on the board, why would they take Chop Robinson or something like that? You know what I'm saying? Why would they go make a left at Albuquerque when they got such a great plug-and-play starter right there? So, like, some of them...
Playing ceilings and floors. It's like, nobody's bust-proof and nobody's can't miss. Let's just use 2 of the 3 names you just said. I'm not a prophet. I got a real hard time imagining Graham Barton not at worst being a damn solid, good NFL offensive lineman that you get a lot of mileage out of.
I mean,
at worst, I can imagine Chop Robinson being a backup.
Now, here's a question. Do you have Barton as a guard or a center?
I have him as a get his ass in the building and figure it out.
Yeah. You stole it. I had the words right at the tip of my tongue.
No, if you told me I had to be serious, I mean, look, you're talking about 100, not 99, 100th percentile athleticism at center.
Mm-hmm.
99th at guard, as if there's some drop off or anything.
Elite.
He's elite, dude. I mean, if I'm Seattle, I'm calling him. If he falls to me at Green Bay, I'm calling him so fast. I'm jittering on the phone. And in between, there's plenty of places. But I mean, for me, his range, I don't understand a world he's not in that 16 to 25 range, and that's where he should be.
Mm-hmm.
But that's tough. It really is. Because if you ask somebody what's more rare, they'd tell you to put him at center. But it's just, I couldn't answer it. I'll be honest with you. I'll sit here and I'll admit you stumped me on that one. And I should have an answer, but my smart aleck / at the same time real genuine answer is just get him in the building, dude. If you've got a center and you've looked up and he's there and he's too good to say and you need a guard, boom, you just answered your own question and vice versa. And if you look up and you have enough interior offensive line issues that you have a center issue and a guard issue, don't worry, you'll find him a spot. That's kind of where my mindset is. Not to sound like, old boy about it, but it's the truth.
Mm-hmm. No. And the thing is, I think part of the reason why you're having an issue of pinpointing if you would rather have a guy like Barton at guard or center is partially because my main issue with this offensive line class is while I like a lot of these prospects, especially at the top, there's a lot of projection going on here because if you're projecting Barton to be a guard or a center, you might lean towards center because he's at least gotten a few starts at the position. Granted, it was in 2020 during the pandemic shortened season, but he actually played center for a few games. He's never played guard.
That's a really great point you made, and I should have, because you're right. But I mean, you take that. It's like I believe he had 5 starts at center.
Yeah, yep. Which is nothing 3 years ago. But
okay. So you've only taken away, air quotes. You've taken away from him with those 2 comments of saying 1, it was during COVID, and 2, it was 3 years ago. Hell, my comment to that would be that's even more impressive. In terms of
we're still projecting him as
he was a freshman. You threw him out there during COVID. It's like, I was not in college during that, but hell, I'd have probably just been doing solid to stay out of trouble and not like get busted out drinking when I wasn't supposed. Just to say like he is a freshman during COVID at Duke, took care of some center as a guy who is so dominantly the best offensive lineman on that campus that we're talking about him as a 100th percentile center, a 99th percentile guard, and beyond those 5 starts at center, all of his starting experience in college was at left tackle because he was just so much better. I mean, you couldn't justify not putting him out there versus what you can on an NFL offensive line. You're absolutely right. He's one where I've sat here and said, oh, his floor is so high, his floor is so high, his floor is so high. But there is an incredible level of projection with that. So he that is part of what makes Barton such a fun prospect is somebody such as myself can sit here and hit you with so many definitives and so much concrete thought of, oh, this is what he is, this is what he is, this is what you're getting. And then in the same sentence that I'm sitting here talking to you like I'm some smart guy, I'm sitting here going, yeah, well, I don't really know, and we don't really know, and just get him there and you'll figure it out. It's kind of one of those things like, what are you going for, brother? But it's just the truth. And I think if you were in you were in league draft rooms, there's plenty of them that sound like me.
And I mean, like I was leading to with Barton being the position, positional versatility question and him never playing guard, is this class is so interesting and so weird for me because it feels like there's so much more projection with some of these guys than we've had in recent years. Like I kind of feel looking back at some of the recent seasons of offensive linemen, like sure, we would have had that offensive tackle who should be a guard in the league. That's not new. But
Peter Skoronski.
Like Scarante last year, exactly. Like he was a good left tackle at Northwestern. Everybody knew he would be a guard in the NFL, and that's fine. But we're talking about guys like Joe Alt, for example. Like when rumors early in the cycle was, oh, maybe Joe Alt can go to the Giants and play right tackle. It's like, yo, your man's played strictly left tackle in college. He has started 33 games, and they've all been at left tackle. Same thing with Olufashinu. Same thing with J.C. Latham, who Latham has been a right tackle, 27 starts at right tackle the last 3 years. He's not played anything else. Fuaga, same thing, a right tackle, strictly Mims, right tackle the last 2 years. I mean, he's only started 8 games, but they've been all at right tackle. Tyler Guyton, same thing. I mean, yeah, he got to start at left tackle in 2022, but he's been mostly a right tackle for his starts. Yet people are still looking at these guys and thinking that it should just be like a simple plug and play at left tackle for some of these guys. And, while I love a guy like Fuaga, he had a great season. He showed out at the Senior Bowl. I mean, he's been doing everything he's needed to every step of the way along this whole process. But like you mentioned earlier, if you're taking Fuaga and planning on making him your left tackle as a rookie, you're going to have a bad time. It's one of those things. So it's a weird class for me with the offensive line, but let's move on from the O-line. Let's move on from the offense. I do want to give the defense a little bit of love.
Super quick, though, if you don't mind. I would say two comments to that. You make a great point. I think that is something that the more just like average fan doesn't hone in on enough. This whole like, oh, well, Joe Alt's played left tackle his entire career, but we got a right tackle need. Well, hey, he's real good. Just go and throw him over there. It's like, that isn't how it works. Does that mean that isn't how it can work in some cases? Oh, yeah. You can, it's like, but no team's going into that saying, let's just example purposes, say Tennessee has some great left tackle but needs a right tackle. And they're like, we'll be fine. We'll just take Alt. It's like, no, they're looking at each other going, nah, J.C. Latham's done this, man. We don't have to project this as much. And I thought I had another comment, but for time purposes, I'll let it go and just yeah.
All right, no worries. So let's keep this chain rolling. Let's see if I can find something fun for the defense. Okay, here's one. Darius Robinson suddenly is an end of first round lock, and Peter Schrager says, don't be surprised if Robinson goes in the top 20. Now, I'm not on board with that in any way, shape, or form. I like Darius Robinson as a prospect. I don't have a first round grade on him. And while it wouldn't surprise me if he's a first round pick, one thing I have seen fairly recently is more popular is Robinson going to the Detroit Lions at the end of the first round. And I guess the need is there, but they just signed Reeder. They're happy with McNeil on the inside. I know Robinson is more of a tweener, but for me, that's his main concern for me. That and the lack of production in the SEC. For such an athletic guy who has such good hand usage, who can be go well between the power to finesse game, where are the game defining plays? Where are the games where he just takes over and is unblockable? That's what I'm looking for in a top 20 pick. Like Byron Murphy, for example, has those instances where he's just smacking guys aside with a nice club hit and just moving the guy over and making a play in the backfield. Like plays where you just stand out. And for Robinson, he's more of a tweener. He packed on, I think he's now up to like 280 or 285 now or something like that when he was most recently weighed. And that's cool. You know, you like that inside outside versatility and you like having that athleticism on the inside in some cases on the pass rush. But top 20, a lock for the back end of the first round? Is that where we've gotten? Are you on that point with a guy like Robinson? Because I'm sure not.
Tying it to my, I know what the second point I was going to say earlier was something along the lines of, no, pause that actually. First, I'd say I can start having the conversation about Robinson around 27 at Arizona. Somebody who's just got across the board defensive line needs. That I could start having the conversations. Yeah, if you're telling me Detroit at 29, you want to start having those conversations, that I'm comfortable with. Before 27, I'm not comfortable. So to your point of, I believe you said it was Schrager said top 20.
Yeah.
That makes me uncomfortable. I think so many want to point at Robinson and so many aspects of him that are so translatable to say any team. His incredible physique, body habitus, the length, his strength. At the same time, whoever takes Robinson is somebody that already has the plan for him made. As somebody, you use the example of Detroit. It's like he's your pick for Detroit because you have your plan with the rest of the guys you already have in the building. I think so many have gotten confused with Robinson in this process. Do I put him as an edge? Do I put him as an interior? He's somebody for, Eli Drinkowitz at Missouri that was just really being a team player. When they needed somebody to kick inside, he kicked inside. When they needed more of an edge rush, he went to edge, because he's the most talented in the room. And I think that was the comment I was going to make was you said so many guys about, the test and all this. At the end of the day, it's all falling back on the tape. And that's what the teams are doing. They're falling back on the tape. They're falling back on what they see there. And somebody's going to have to see on the tape Robinson and say, wow, he fits at this certain tech spot for us, and we're comfortable with him there. I feel more comfortable probably the first couple of picks of the second day, but I don't fault somebody, like I said, in Arizona at 27 or a Detroit at 29. Or, you want to talk about him being a style of theirs, a Baltimore at 30,
I'm also seeing guys like Fisk, the Florida State defensive tackle. He's another popular name that I'm seeing at the back end of the first round.
It's a little rich.
It's a little rich for my blood. But then you see guys like, let's say, Chop Robinson, for example. And Chop Robinson is being rumored as being closer to, maybe like a Latu or Turner level than he is considered a little bit lower.
And Chop is closer to being a style of prospect. I have so many buzzwords, and I could sit here and sound like a Kuiper, having like an episode or something. Value or something. But like that is one where. Remind me again what our point was right there. What we were talking about.
Chop Robinson.
Thank you.
Someone like Chop rising up.
That is a spot where Chop is someone. I always say it only takes one team. He's someone really. It's like someone. Hey, tie back to what you said earlier in this episode. That person that goes in the top 10 that we all kind of jump out of our chair and look at each other like, oh, it's woke, it's live. They took Daniel Jones at 6. Hello, how you doing? Oh, they took McCarthy at 2nd. Hello, we're up. You get my point. It's like
Chop Robinson at 8. What?
But like, I don't think that extreme, but like I think he's that kind of player that someone thought, I'm just pulling here, but like let's say Denver has swung and a miss with the quarterbacks, and he said he's just going to roll with Zach Wilson and Jarrett Stidham this year, and he's like, I think this kid's upside is through the roof, and I'm going to take the swing. YOLO, I'm taking him at 12. It's like crazier stuff's happened. I mean, I just pulled that example way out of my backside right there.
It fits though. I mean,
But like
rumors
it
you'll be
fits for the
looking at an
example
offset
of
at the
like
end.
he's the perfect example of somebody that's like we've had so I don't want to say fun talking about him as a faller. Like, oh, it's been so fun talking about someone's misfortune. But like the talking point has been his floor in terms of a draft asset. The storyline when we leave draft night could be us all talking about, man, somebody shot for the ceiling. That's a perfect example to kind of round that point you had earlier. Like I said, of somebody that is the kind of name we look at and go, whoo, they liked him a lot.
And he does fit that kind of profile for the guy
Will
who will
McDonald to the
randomly
Jets
shoot
at
up
16
and
last
be a
year.
top 15 pick. Why? I mean, he set the record as an
Freak
edge rusher for
athletes.
the 40, setting records for I think he had like the 10 cone record or something like that.
Shuttle's just disturbing.
Prototype wingspan and length and arm length and the explosive get off, like all the buzzwords.
Kids' thighs look like a stump in my front yard.
That's what I'm saying. He's got that physical profile. If there's going to be anybody, it's never going to be the technically savvy guy who might not be as athletically gifted. He might end up being the 10-year starter who gets taken at the end of the first round, but the guys who go top 15 like this,
George Karlaftis.
he's exactly a guy who
George Karlaftis is your example of
not the most athletic, but
not the most athletic, but just
he's
tough as hell and so productive. And what'll he do? He'll start for the Chiefs for a decade and win 4 Super Bowls. And
absolutely. And he'll never be looked at as one of the upper echelon edge rushers. He'll never be given respect of someone who locks it down at the edge. He'll just be that lunch and pail guy who's going to go out, start 16 games every season, 17 games every season, get 8 to 12 sacks maybe on a great year. And yeah, just go about it ho hum. That's
what Andy took him to be. That's what Andy took him to be.
That's all he needed him. So we are running on 53 minutes. I want to wrap this up. So I want to make this our last segment. I want to thank our viewers for sticking with us thus far. We got a lot of people watching. Thank you guys for sticking with us. I, again, am your host, Dan Kornhauser. This is Feelin A Draft. I'm with my guest here, Clint Goss, at NFL Draft Dome on X. So you can follow him there. And we're talking NFL Draft. That's what we do, baby. And here's how I want to end, okay? So we started with the Falcons. We're going to end with the Falcons. So let's say Atlanta takes Latu in the first round, 8th overall. Going into day 2 and day 3, what positions or player do you want them to target on day 2, and what positions or player would you want them to target on day 3, specifically for the Falcons?
Sorry, I'm sitting here with the dog telling me he's ready to go. You gotta wait a minute. Okay, this conversation we take Latu at 8. We're stuck with the original picks that we have at 43. Best player available. Oh, we're cutting that. We're not being politically correct. You got a gun for corner at 43. I think specifically, you look at that tier. Everyone, it feels. We've talked about how it's popular to put Turner at 8, but I really think it's Latu. It's really been popular to do that tier of corners like Ennis Rakestraw Jr. out of Missouri. Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia.
Sanders Still from Michigan.
Sanders Still, a little more of a nickel in my opinion, but I have seen him thrown in there. I'm trying to think of TJ Tampa was the other name.
Max Melton.
Out of Iowa State. Well, you took my words out of my mouth. That was what I was getting to. Melton's the name for me there.
Okay.
Melton, zone built corner, and that's really going to be more of the shift in this defense going to Jimmy Lake style and what's asked of him. Sorry, I'm letting the dog out here as he is.
No worries.
About to wake the kid up. But no, I mean, that would definitely be it for me. I don't see how it isn't corner there at the second, particularly with that tier that there will be someone available. And then there's the 2 third-rounders. That's where I think it's
That's
more
where
in
it
terms of
is.
positionally, what are we going to do?
Yeah, so let's say you go edge and corner in the first 2 rounds.
You go
You're
edge
still
and
trading
corner.
the
I think
third.
you'd probably be gunning to see where you stood as far as a safety there. Maybe somebody with some nickel ability like a Javon Bullard, if a Cole Bishop out of Utah is still around.
Yep.
I think those are some names to circle. Do you go ahead and look at that additional rookie receiver you need? Jalen Polk is a name I've had circled that I think fits what they're looking
Huge
for
fan.
versus what's already in the building. You've had the Darnell Mooney edition as the elite separator. You've had the Rondale Moore edition as the scat.
But neither
Those
one of
guys
those
are
guys really inspires any sort of fear or
well. They're
confidence.
fun. I mean, I think
They're
Mooney in
niche
particular.
guys.
I think Mooney in particular is going to be a dog as a 2. Well, he'd be a 3 because I consider Pitts the 2, and not being totally um, a schematic geek, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
Guys that are sub 6 foot. I think somebody who's a little bigger, 200 plus. Do you want to go ahead and look at a developmental swing tackle that they need? Jake Matthews can't play forever. Caleb McGarry will be out of town after this contract. There's not anybody really beyond that with developmental upside. Do you look at the defensive interior? You've switched from this 4-3 to this 3-4. You need somebody with more of a wide backside, versus the David Onyematas and the Grady Jarretts who are 300 or sub 300 build.
Do you take a swing at a guy like Sweat, the defensive tackle out of Tavondre Sweat?
Well, I mean, he's who they would, in terms of what I just said, who they would be looking at. I mean, another name of McKinley Jackson out of A&M's more of a 0 and 1 tech on the interior who's got 340, 330 plus kind of weight and got a big butt, got big shoulders. That's one. If you ask me my ideal dream and realistically what I think, I'd love to go 8 Latu. I'd like to go 43 Max Melton. I'd like to come back 73, depending on the board. My dream pick there would be Javon Bullard or Cole Bishop as far as a safety with some nickel ability.
Okay.
And then 79, I'd like to come back and there be a receiver such as a Javon Baker out of Central Florida, such as a Jalen Polk out of Washington with some size. If not, if that's when you're ready to go for an interior on defense, but that'd be a couple of the names. And then lastly, just the last thing you asked, you said day 3, what would be something to look at?
Yeah, give me a day 3 sleeper that you want the Falcons to maybe take a swing at.
Dwayne Carter out of Duke is a defensive interior who's got a lot of very high floor in terms of run defense. Very technically sound. He's been the best player in that room, respectfully, by a wide margin. So being able to see him with some equivalent or superior talent, I think to develop him, putting him with the likes of a David Onyemata or Grady Jarrett, that's somebody in the 4th, 5th round that excites me. For the Falcons, I've got circled.
Okay.
I don't see secondary being the day 3 move as much versus what they have in the building in terms of the upside. I think it's going to be more.
They need an outside corner.
Well, I'm just speaking on
corner early.
I'm just speaking on day 3. They need some defensive interior depth, and they need some developmental swing tackle, for example, and things along those lines. And I wouldn't hate another tight end. The excitement really, to me, is those 2 third-rounders. Mm-hmm. The 2 third-rounders is where Terry, and I'm going to have to be quiet because we're running out of time. That's where Terry's going to have to get creative.
I mean, you're in a great position to come out with some real home run hitters, especially in the first 2 days. And the 3rd round, I love that 3rd round because there's going to be so many quality players still on the board, legitimate year 1 potential starters. And if I'm the team like the Falcons, trading back in the 1st round and still getting your guy potentially at the edge, if you can net an extra 3rd round pick, I mean, A+, not only on the trade back, but you get an extra 3rd, you have 3 3rd-round picks. That's the money round for me this year.
Particularly if the Falcons are in trouble. Tampa in trouble. Not to start that convo, but it's just, that's going to be interesting the next few days to see if that becomes even more important in terms of Wouldn't exactly hate a spare third rounder to make up for it. You're right.
We said we wouldn't talk about it. We're not going to do it.
Shh. What I say a second ago, I said I'm a hush because I'm out of time. So
We're
I'm
out of
quiet.
time. It's fine. But Clint,
Go Birds.
I want to thank you for joining me tonight. I know my viewers enjoyed it. Dropping a lot of knowledge on them this hour, a lot of back and forth. I loved it. If you can guys give Clint a follow on X, he's at NFL Draft Dome, and check out his work. Like I said, 99.1 FM, Atlanta Falcons Radio. StadiumRant.com is where you can find some of his work as well. Draft analyst for them. Of course, you can find me on X as well and on Instagram. It's DB Talking Sports. D as in Dan, B as in Bob. So for Clint, thank you very much. I'm Dan Kornhauser.
Thank you for having me. Let me get that comment in there as well. I enjoyed it. Like I said, if nothing else, this was some good sanity here down the stretch.
That's what you need sometimes. That's what you need. Have a great night, Clint. Everyone watching, thank you guys. We'll catch you guys after the draft. Enjoy it. Keep an eye out for my top 100 coming out tomorrow. My final mock draft coming out Wednesday. And enjoy it Thursday, Friday, Saturday. For Clint, I'm